Welcome to Speak English Podcast. I'm David, joined by Sarah, and today we're tackling an issue many learners face. Can you actually improve spoken English without a partner? Sarah, why do so many students believe speaking alone isn't effective?
Great question, David. I think it comes from traditional classroom models, where conversation means interaction. But research from Cambridge University shows self-talk and solo speaking exercises actually accelerate fluency, mainly because they reduce anxiety.
That's fascinating. So, if practice partners aren't always necessary, what advantages does solo speaking bring to the table compared to waiting for a conversation partner?
Practicing alone removes social pressure, allowing learners to experiment freely. Plus, you control the pace and content. Imagine a musician rehearsing scales alone before performing with an orchestrates a similar principle for language.
Let's clarify what we mean by speaking alone. It's not just thinking in English, right? Can you explain the difference for our listeners, Sarah?
Absolutely. Silent thinking only engages your mind, but speaking out loud activates the muscles used for speech, your mouth, tongue, even your breathing. It's like athletes visualizing a race versus actually running on the track.
So, by vocalizing, learners are physically training their speech organs too. Does this help with pronunciation and natural rhythm?
Exactly. Speaking out loud builds muscle memory, so forming English sounds becomes automatic. Over time, your accent improves, and you start to sound more natural, much like how singers rehearse with their voices, rather than silently reading lyrics.
One powerful method you mentioned is narrating daily activities. How does describing what you're doing out loud support fluency, especially for beginners?
Narration is fantastic because it links language to real-life context. For instance, saying, "I'm making coffee" while doing it builds a direct association. Stanford linguist Stephen Krashen notes this context-based learning cements vocabulary faster.
It sounds simple, but can learners run out of things to say? How can they keep it varied and engaging?
Rotate topics. Describe your clothes, surroundings, or even your emotions. Or try the what-if game. Imagine a different weather or activity and narrate that. This keeps your brain flexible and vocabulary expanding.
Another technique is simulating conversations by asking and answering your own questions. Why does this help, and how should learners structure these mini dialogues?
When you ask yourself questions like, "What did I do yesterday?" and answer them out loud, you're practicing both sides of a conversation. This improves fluency and prepares you for real interactions by building reflexes.
Are there studies backing this up? I've heard that role-playing is used even in professional language training.
Absolutely. The Foreign Service Institute uses self-cue, A, to prepare diplomats. It helps them think on their feet and form coherent responses under pressure, which translates well to daily English practice.
Let's talk about speaking nonstop for several minutes. How does setting a timer, say, for 3 minutes help learners push past hesitation and build fluency?
Timed speaking is like running a race. It forces you to keep going without stopping for mistakes. Over time, this builds verbal stamina and trains you to organize thoughts quickly, which is essential for fluent conversation.
Can even advanced learners benefit from this, or is it just for beginners?
Both can benefit. Advanced learners might tackle complex topics or use more sophisticated vocabulary. Beginners focus on forming basic sentences. Either way, the continuous flow boosts confidence and mental agility.
You also recommend storytelling and giving opinions. How do these methods help learners develop more advanced skills, like connecting ideas and expressing emotions?
Storytelling requires logical sequencing beginning, middle, end, which mirrors real conversations. Sharing opinions, meanwhile, encourages critical thinking. It's like practicing for debates, where you must clearly explain and support your views.
Does this also help with vocabulary expansion and pronunciation?
Definitely. Storytelling introduces diverse verbs and adjectives, while expressing opinions uses modal verbs and connectors. Both activities force you to use new sounds and intonation, refining both vocabulary and pronunciation.
Let's dig into why speaking alone works so well. What does science say about its effects on memory, confidence, and thinking in English?
A 2022 study by the British Council found that vocal repetition speaking out loud activates more brain regions than silent reading. This builds stronger neural pathways for language, improving recall and reducing reliance on translation.
So, does this also mean learners start to think in English instead of their native language?
Exactly. Regular solo speaking shortens the mental gap between thought and speech. Over time, learners develop speech automaticity, making real-life conversations far less daunting.
Now, let's get practical. What's an effective daily or weekly routine for speaking alone that listeners can start today, regardless of level?
Begin by setting aside a consistent time like mornings or during a walk. Start with simple narration, then progress to timed topics, storytelling, and self-questioning. Recording yourself adds an extra feedback loop, much like athletes reviewing game footage.
How important is variety in this routine? Should listeners mix up activities each day?
Absolutely. Varying your practice describing, storytelling, mimicking podcast prevents boredom and ensures comprehensive skill development. Each style targets different aspects of language, from spontaneity to pronunciation.
Let's talk tech-how. Can smartphones or basic recording devices accelerate solo English practice?
Recording yourself is invaluable. It lets you hear mistakes in pronunciation, rhythm, or grammar you might miss otherwise. A study by the Open University showed learners who reviewed their recordings improved fluency up to 30% faster.
Should learners focus on accuracy or just get used to speaking when recording themselves?
Early on, focus on fluency, let the words flow. Don't stop for mistakes. Later, listen back to identify patterns or errors, then repeat the exercise with improvements. It's a cycle that mirrors how professional athletes watch game replays to enhance performance.
Even with the best intentions, learners can fall into traps. What are some common mistakes when practicing alone, and how can listeners avoid them?
One major pitfall is expecting perfection and freezing when they can't find a word. Instead, use simpler language or describe the concept. Think of it as painting with broad strokes first, then adding detail.
That makes sense. What about the tendency to repeat comfortable sentences or translate from one's native language?
Challenge yourself. Pick new topics, use fresh vocabulary, and try to think directly in English. Over time, this reduces translation and builds true fluency. Remember, progress is personal. Don't compare yourself with others.
For listeners eager to start, what's a simple challenge to kick off their solo speaking journey and build a lasting habit?
Try a 7-day challenge. Speak out loud for 5 minutes daily on any topic. Write down topics in advance like your favorite food or a recent movie. This removes decision fatigue, making it easier to stick with the routine.
Some learners might feel awkward speaking alone. Any tips to overcome that initial discomfort?
Use the mirror technique. Speak to yourself as if addressing a friend. Over time, it feels more natural and helps with eye contact and body language. Remember, every habit feels strange at first, but consistency transforms it into second nature.
Stepping back, how does solo speaking practice translate into real-world improvements? Can learners expect to see tangible changes in actual conversations?
Absolutely. Solo practice is like rehearsing for a play. You build confidence, fluency, and agility. When real conversations happen, you're ready. Many learners report less anxiety and more natural speech after consistent solo practice.
So, in essence, the time spent speaking alone acts as a powerful rehearsal for life's big moment interviews, travel, or even making new friends?
Exactly. Think of it as training your voice and mind for every situation. When the big moment comes, you'll be ready not just to speak, but to connect.
Before we wrap up, what's your key takeaway for listeners starting their solo English journey?
Remember, You don't need a perfect setting, or partner your own voice is your strongest tool. The more you use it, the more fluent, confident, and natural you'll become. Start today, stay consistent, and enjoy the journey.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks to everyone listening. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and watch your English reach new heights. See you next time on the Speak English podcast.